Hello everyone, my name is Chris the Fields, and today I have something quite a bit different, but quite a bit special. I stole this idea from Rasputin, and a few of my other friends have since done it in the following few days. But this is a tier list of all the games I played during the year of 2020. Not necessarily games that came out this year, but just the ones that I played. There are about 40 or so games right here, and we're going to rank them on a tier list. And I'm sure you know how these tier lists work. We're gonna just define it sort of for me, so this is what I'm thinking when I'm doing this. So like B is like neutral, I suppose. I feel like I might feel good about the game if I put it in here, but overall I just feel good about it. It was a nice game to play, I'm glad I played it. And S being something I really enjoyed, and D being something where I might have enjoyed it in some senses, but was largely just a game which I didn't really care for. Again, I'm sure you know how tier lists work, and over here is all the games I played, roughly in the order that I completed them in the year, but games that are similar to each other I just grouped together for convenience sake. So let's just get started with the first one, which will be Fire Emblem Awakening. And this one is going to be a rather interesting pick, because Awakening is one of my favorite video games of all time, if not the favorite. But I also didn't really enjoy the way I played it this year. That being is, the playthrough I'm referring to is, I did a Lunatic playthrough at the start of the year, and I do not enjoy playing on Lunatic, so it's like, do I still put Awakening in the S tier because it's still one of my favorite games of all time, or do I put it in the D tier because I didn't appreciate it, or do I just put it in B because I don't know? And that's going to be kind of a little bit of a difficult thing to decide. So I really don't know the answer, but I think I'm going to just leave it in B, because I still feel pretty much the same about Awakening as I used to. It's still one of my favorite games of all time, and despite not enjoying the playthrough I'm thinking of, I mean, I don't feel any better or worse about it. It's still just one of my favorite games of all time. So, yeah, B for the neutral. I think that makes sense. That is fine. And then Resident Evil 4, which is easy S tier. And if you want to know what my favorite game I played this year was, it would actually be Resident Evil 4. I would say that's my game of the year. Resident Evil 4 went from a game that I just casually enjoyed in the past, and it became one of my favorite games of all time. Like, top 10. That's how favorite we're talking. I played this game like 9 or 10 times, all the way through from start to end this year. Just either New Game Plus or Fresh Starts or whatever I did, and I just had a blast with it all the way through. I wanted to even make like an actual proper video on Resident Evil 4 talking about why it's so good, but unfortunately did not happen. Maybe in 2021, who knows. But speaking of Resident Evil 4, we also have Separate Ways, which I actually just played for the first time this year, and I think it's either a B or it's a C. I think I'll put it in B for now. If I decide to move it down, we can do that later, but I think it's for a B, because I feel overall just okay about it. Like, it was fun to see what Ada was doing during the main game, but it wasn't quite as fleshed out as I was hoping it would be. It feels like I would have rather it have been like a Jill to a Chris or a Claire to Leon, you know? But it's just kind of more of like a mini side mode rather than an actual campaign. And I was kind of hoping it'd be an actual campaign, but whatever, it's fine. I don't feel like any grudges against it, but does not have nearly the same heart or charm as the base game of Resident Evil 4. Next up is Fire Emblem Warriors, which I think is another B tier. Oddly enough, I think I ended up enjoying playing Fire Emblem Warriors more this year than I did in previous, when I did first play it in 2017. And that's just kind of the nature of Musou games, is they get better the more time you put into them. But this was a fresh playthrough from the start, and I did really enjoy it, but I really don't have anything to say about it that's really noteworthy. And then next up on the list is the Cindered Shadows Fire Emblem Three Houses DLC route, which I'm a bit more fond of than most other people. That being said, I don't think I'd place it higher than C. It's the kind of mode where once I was done with it, I have no desire to ever go back and replay it. The thing about Cindered Shadows is it just has no, like, replayability to it. Like, I already did hardest playthrough, hard classic, when it launched, so I've already did all the challenge that it has to offer, so therefore I have absolutely no incentive to go back, and nor do I want to, because it's overall pretty fun. It has a lot of great challenge to it, but the challenge, especially on hard mode, was rather ridiculous, and I feel really burned out on it. I don't want to go back to it whatsoever. But overall, I enjoyed it more than enough to have it clear into C tier, but yeah, I do not think I will ever replay it, and if I do, it's not going to be anytime soon. And now we have Yoku's Island Express, which is an easy A tier. This is just a very fun, like, blending of Metroid and pinball that is just an absolute delight. If you have not played it before, I played it on Game Pass, Xbox Game Pass, and that is a great Game Pass game. It's just very simple. You can pick it up and play it through like 3 or 4 sessions. It's probably like a 5-ish hour game, and it's just an absolute delight for all 5 of those hours. It's so jolly, so cheerful. One of the most cheerful and wholesome games I've ever played. I cannot recommend looking into it enough. Yoku's Island Express. What a wonderful game. Next we have Ori and the Blind Forest, which, if you do not know, this is the game I actually cited as my Game of the Year when it originally launched in 2015. It's such a beautiful game. It's got a lot of fun things about it. But when I replayed it this year, I realized I didn't like it as much as I used to. So I'm putting it in C tier for that reason. It's ironically, not that it hasn't aged well or anything, but I just overall feel a lot less positively inclined towards a lot of the mechanical decisions they made, and how it is kind of rather linear considering it's a Metroidvania title. It still plays fine, it still plays great, and the story is still absolutely beautiful, but overall, felt a little less positively inclined to it. But Ori and the Will and the Wisps, on the other hand, is absolutely everything the sequel could want to be. Absolutely beautiful game, cried at the ending, wonderful. But I'm putting it in B tier because when I played it around its launch, it had numerous technical issues. We're talking game crashes, we're talking about the game dropping frames, we're talking about locking up for like 5 seconds at a time. I can't say it's the Cyberpunk of Metroidvania 2D titles, but sure felt really bad to play, and for that reason, as much as I would love to put it in an S tier, and as much as I really want to say it's my Game of the Year for this year, in terms of a game that came out this year, those technical issues really took me out of the game, really set it back, and I still love the game enough to play it all the way through. I 100% completed the game, but that being said, it was launched in such an unacceptable state that I have to hold it against the game. Like, as much as I don't want to, that's the experience I had, and I'm rating it based on the experience I had. It was a mess. What wasn't a mess, though, was Tales of Symphonia, which is one of my favorite games of all time. I did 2 playthroughs of that game this year. Once to just kind of casually play it through, and second to view alternate scenes and go down alternate paths in the story. I mean, it's not like there's like a whole branching narrative. It's just that it goes down the same way regardless, but there's some decisions you can make that influence like how certain events play out later in the game. And it was fun both times, and it re-cemented itself as one of my favorite games of all time. It's kind of one of those games where it's like, yeah, it was always one of my favorites, but I kind of forgot like how much of a favorite it was of mine until I replayed it this year. And I realized just how special of a game that was. And speaking of Tales, we also have Tales of Vesperia, the Definitive Edition, which I finished for the first time this year. And I'm putting in an S tier Not because it's one of my favorite games ever now, but playing this game this year had a really profound impact on my life. 2020 was not a good year for many people, and I played this game around the time of the George Floyd murder and the Minneapolis protests and the subsequent protests that happened all around the United States. I played this game around that time, and playing it then really had a profound impact on the themes of justice and morality that this game goes over. Like seeing like stuff that happens in the game also being paralleled in real life made this game have a lot more meaning than it could have ever possibly had at any other time I could have played it in my life. So for that reason, I look back on this game really fondly and have a lot of like strong emotional attachment to it, despite not being one of my favorites in the series. In fact, I'd compare Tales of Vesperia to Final Fantasy IX in the fact that it's a fan favorite title that many people love and adore, but I have a lot more little nitty-gritty issues with that really prevents it from being one of my favorite Tales of games. But that being said, it also had such a unique feel and such a profound impact on me that I still look back on it with a lot of great fondness, despite its mechanical and story shortcomings in many points. So I think it should get to S tier for that. What Remains of Edith Finch was another Game Pass title that I played this year, and I think B is the great spot for it because I did really like it, and I'm sure that this game really affected a lot of people in positive ways. Overall, I left with a sort of a neutral feeling on it. I still look back on the game rather fondly, but I don't feel like I have a lot to say about it. I don't really remember too much about it. There are a lot of great set-piece moments, and this game is just such a downer in such a well-presented and memorable way that I did enjoy it, but overall, it's not like a game where I left it feeling much more enriched in life or anything like that. It was just a fun time for the evening I played it. It's the kind of game where it's like, if you have 3 hours of spare time, just go through it all in one night, and I think you'll really get something out of it if you do that, but overall, I just felt like neutral about it. I felt like pretty much the same ways I feel about other B tiers, so it's a B tier. Animal Crossing New Horizons. I have not played an Animal Crossing game since the DS one, Wild World. So this is my first time returning to the series since then, and I would gladly put it in A tier. I think there is so much to adore, so much to love, and this game was important to a lot of people, especially during the COVID pandemic. Kind of let us feel like what a normal life was like in the time where we really needed it the most. That said, I have not played the game since maybe the summer months. I can't remember the last time I opened up Animal Crossing. But I enjoyed it for what it was, and I enjoyed it more than the B tier titles, so it can go up into A. But I feel like if I played it a lot more consistently throughout the year, it would have gone up into S territory, but I think A is a pretty good spot for it. Alright, Final Fantasy VII Remake, what might be the biggest deal game on this list, and I can't decide whether I really want to put it in S or A. So I have feelings about Final Fantasy VII Remake, which are probably going to be different than wherever I put it on the list. I think this is absolutely one of the most well-made and loving remakes, or recreations of an existing video game property. There was a lot of love and care and admiration for the original that was remade with reverence. And there are pacing problems, there are technical problems, there's a lot of problems with Final Fantasy VII Remake, but overall, it was so well made in a way that was really revering of the original game. That being said, the ending and what the possibility is for other future Final Fantasy VII Remake games, I have a lot of questions, and I don't feel confident that Square is able to answer those questions in a way that will leave me satisfied. But I don't want to rate Final Fantasy VII Remake on a theoretical Part 2 or Part 3 that we don't even have inklings of yet. and I don't think it's fair to hold Remake against the standards that I have set for its future installments. As a game, as it exists, this is like one of the best action games I've ever played. Like, never mind RPGs, like strict pure action, Final Fantasy VII Remake is blissful. Like, every single character is so fun to play, even as their frog forms. So, like, for that reason, I want to put in an S. Like that's such easy S material, but how I feel about the game overall, maybe closer to A. I'll put in an A because it's closer to my gut feeling. Well, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. Like, I know this was a lot of people's game of the year, and rightfully so. It has a lot of good things about it, but I'm also terrified. You know what? And that terror is much more inclined to keep it an A. So that's where it's staying. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, one of the greatest RPGs ever made. Like, look at this. Final Fantasy VII Remake, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. Like, banger RPGs right here. This is a lineup if I've ever seen one. And speaking of me putting it in A tier to compare it to Final Fantasy, it's an A tier game. Because what feels weird about it is like Tales of Symphonia, and even to a lesser extent Tales of Vesperia, is that like Xenoblade Chronicles is like one of my favorite games of all time, like top 5. But playing the Definitive Edition did not hit quite as hard as my first or even second playthroughs of Xenoblade Chronicles, because I played through the game last year when the Definitive Edition was announced, or I guess 2 years ago at this point. I played through the Wii version again to get prepared for it, because I thought that Definitive Edition was going to be much more of a remake, when it ended up just being more of a remaster. That being said, it's perhaps intentionally the definitive way to play Xenoblade Chronicles in 2020 or 2021. And if you have not played this game, I'd suggest picking up the Definitive Edition because, like I said, it's the best version to play. Most accessible, best version, for multiple reasons. And while if I were to go back to play Xenoblade Chronicles, I'd probably still play the Wii version over Definitive Edition. But that's just me, that's just personal takes. Nothing against the actual Definitive Edition. Speaking of Definitive Edition, it also came with a DLC campaign, or I guess just a pack-in campaign, however you want to call it, Future Connected, taking place after the events of Xenoblade Chronicles. A lot of people had issues with this for multiple reasons, but one of the most common that I noticed was that people are mad that it did not connect in any way to other Xenoblade games like Xenoblade 2 or X or even Xenogears or Xenosaga or something like that, which was the most common take around this time. And I laugh at those people. I laugh at them with a big ha 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 because they played themselves. Like, granted, it's a campaign called Future Connected, which means that it might connect to the future of Xenoblade, but I don't know if I'm just cynical or what, because it's like I'm never going to hold it against a game if it doesn't deliver on promises, which it never promised to do in the first place. And if you think that it should have or was supposed to connect to other Xenoblade games, you played yourself, and I laugh at that. That being said, it's not a D, it's a C. That being said, it's just an okay, expansion. There's only one new area to explore, and it's a big ol' huge area, and it's quite beautiful. But that's all there really is to it. The story's just okay. The characters are okay. Melia gets a little more closure than she did in the base game, but just okay. There's really not a whole lot notable to say about it. Next we have Trails of Cold Steel for the PS3, which is the version I played. And I think we have our first D tier of the list, ladies and gentlemen. So it's not a bad game, and I enjoyed quite a bit of it, but it's also a game that annoyed me way more than I enjoyed. This is one of the slowest paced games I ever played in my life, and I know that's just kind of par for the course with the Trails of series. by the way, Trails of, different than Tales of, two completely different things. If you don't know RPG series, I feel like that should probably be clarified. This is not the same as this. But Trails is very slow. It really loves its world building to a fault, I think, because it's just too proud of its world and it really wants to show it to you. And I think that's admirable. God knows it's a better world than I could ever hope to write, but boy, does it's just like one of those games where it's like, just get to the point already. like Trails, Cold Steel 1 in particular, is the meme where it's like you have to play the RPG for 10 hours before it gets good. That's like actually what this game is. But yeah, Trails has a lot of neat things to it. It has great characters, a great story, great world. But boy, is it just slow. The story like takes forever to get started. Fights also take a long time as well. I'm probably gonna get blasted, but I think the music's just kind of okay. Cool, but okay. And just for the mixed emotions I have overall, it just gets put into D tier. Now, Trails of Cold Steel 2, on the other hand, is infinitely better than Trails of Cold Steel 1. That said, I don't think I'd put it above B tier. I like how Trails of Cold Steel 2... Well, Trails of Cold Steel 1, it kind of has like the flow of a Persona game. It follows a calendar system. Every month there's like a big ol' mission that you go on, and you do that mission for a good few hours. And then the rest of the stuff is like you spending time at school and hanging out with friends and things like that. Trails of Cold Steel has like sort of the same gameplay framework, but it frames the story much differently. This one is more of like a classical JRPG adventure in a way. So overall, the pacing of Cold Steel 2 is way better than the pacing of Cold Steel 1. Granted, you had to play an entire game of world building to get there, but Cold Steel 2 can't hold it against it. It's just a fun game in many more respects than 1 was. But it also still suffers from many of the issues that still plague 1 in late game pacing and just combat speed and all that. And granted, I'm playing these games on the PS3 versions, which are the technically most inferior versions of these games. To be fair, that being said, I don't know if it would help it that much more if I had a speed up button. But I don't know, just enjoyable game. Not an A tier. B tier's fine for it. Alright, Golden Sun. Now, if you've been following me on Twitter when I was playing Golden Sun for the first time, you know I was popping off on this game. This is such a simple but beautiful game in so many ways. But that being said, it's in A tier because this game's incomplete. Like, it's just in a similar way to Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2. You can play Golden Sun 1, have a great time, but once you get to that ending, it's like, oh, okay, they had to split this game up into 2 parts. So for as like well balanced and great as Golden Sun is, it's just part 1, and the ending is so inconclusive and so deflating that it really brings the rest of the game down. And there's a lot more to say about Golden Sun. I want to make a video on this game so bad. So badly do I want to make a video on this game and talk about why it's so good, because guys, Golden Sun 1 is so good, but if it was just more conclusive, it would have been an S tier, but it's not, so it has to be an A tier. Now, Golden Sun The Lost Age, on the other hand, is a lot more messy and not as elegant as Golden Sun 1. But that being said, it's also, like, in a weird way, more brilliant. It's way more ambitious. It tries something completely new, where Golden Sun 1 was just a jolly simple adventure in JRPG world. Golden Sun 2 is like almost like Metroidvania in its world and story progression. It's like, okay, you have to get to this point, but we're not going to explicitly tell you how to get to this point. You have to explore the world and get new powers and figure out this whole freaking ordeal for yourself. And then once you do that, then you can get to that place. So it's so Metroidvania in that respect. It's kind of, weirdly enough, Golden Sun 2 is the game that made me understand why Metroidvanias are so good. Because, like, the more you uncover and the more powers you gain and the stronger you grow, the world just makes more sense. So for that reason, like, it's an S tier. In fact, if it weren't for Resident Evil 4, Golden Sun: The Lost Age would have been my favorite game I played in 2020. Like, Golden Sun 1 and 2 are just some of the best RPGs ever made. You just gotta play them. If you haven't played them, go play them. They are wonderful. They're wonderful games. Next on our list is Wild Guns on the Super Nintendo. I played this game with my friend Peridactyl on his stream. Played the whole game together, and it's a short game, like an hour-long game or so. This is a game I have a difficult time placing, because overall I think I feel kind of neutral about it, so it would be in a B tier, but just playing with a friend was such a wonderful experience. And it's a really fun game too. Like, it's again, like the kind of game you forget how good it is until you pick it up again. It's just like classic, great, arcadey fun. And I landed the final, or like the final hit on the final boss, like with like 1 life remaining, or on my last life, or something like that. And it was clenched to all hell, but it was such a fun moment. And you know what? We'll put it in A tier. Wild Guns is great. It's an A tier game. What's not an A tier game is Fall Guys. Fall Guys is like endemic of like hype culture and zeitgeist culture in a weird way. Fall Guys is like, when I was playing it, it was fun. Maybe A tier, maybe A tier levels of fun, but also I was apparently totally willing to drop it like a fly, like a bug, and I've not since gone back to pick it up again. Nor have I really desired to. So I think I have to put it in C tier, because all of the other games in B tier I would absolutely be willing to pick up again and play again. To varying extents, but I'm willing to like give them that shot. And that's not to say the same for C or D, but C, I am a lot less inclined to go back and revisit it. I have little to none of that desire. And that's kind of where Fall Guys is at. I have not opened that game since like August or so. I can't remember last time I played Fall Guys, but it's been a long time regardless, and 2 other seasons have apparently happened in the game, which I have not even experienced. I only played the Season 1 content, which is unfortunate, but knowing the game that replaced it is not surprising. Among Us is the easiest S tier of the whole list, probably. So I like deception games like Secret Hitler and Mafia and Werewolf. Mostly just Secret Hitler, to be honest. And Among Us is now my new favorite imposter deception game, whatever you want to call this. Like, what I love about Among Us is it just has so much more going on. I'm just going to compare it directly to Secret Hitler because that's what I'm most familiar with. It has so much more going on than Secret Hitler because just where you're placed on a ship and who you see walking past has so much impact on solving the case. So, like, if you're a crewmate, if you just happen to walk in the right place at the right time, even if you don't catch the killer, you can, like, be instrumental in solving the case. Whereas imposter, you have to really think about the implications of killing the person that's right next to you, because if someone just happened to see you with them last, or what if an emergency meeting gets called right now and someone knows the 2 of you were together, or what now? There's just so much more going on, and it's so much more stressful than Secret Hitler that, in a way, it's like I almost don't want to play this game because it's so stressful. In fact, I'm shaking thinking up about it. Like, I don't get imposter quite as much as people think I do, but that being said, getting that clean round, no one even suspecting you, is just super fun, super rewarding. it's kind of like a weird paradox where it's like, I'm not always down to play Among Us because it stresses me out that much, but boy, do I usually want to take people up on the offer if they offer. And I'll just have so much fun playing it if that moment comes around. Okay, but enough good games. Let's go for a bad game, Yakuza Dead Souls, which is a game that has been on my shelf for nearly the past 3 years, maybe past 2. I don't know, time's weird and warped and I have no perception of it anymore. But regardless, I've owned this game for a long time, but I only just played it recently. And it's not great. It's hands down the worst Yakuza game I've ever played. Like, I get the intent. I respect the ambition. They were going for something new, and that's fine. And it's also just a spin-off title, so like, whatever. But it's like a spin-off title, but you'll never have known it was a spin-off title if it weren't for the zombies running around everywhere. Like, it has all the same production values as Yakuza 3 and 4 did. Like, the same heart as those games. But that being said, it goes for a different gameplay style, more of like a shooter sort of deal. And the shooting is just not fun. The combat is really bad in this game, and it just feels so disconnected and so impersonal. Like, a gun is not personal. Fists, very personal. Guns, not personal. And I at least like that they were really willing to run with the concept as far as they could take it, but it's a D-tier game. That's just all there is to it. Metroid Prime, though, that is a good game. That's an A-tier game. I'd almost be willing to put it up in S, but overall I think it's close to A than it is to S. Metroid Prime was the very first Metroid game I had ever played in my life, but I had not finished it until this year. In fact, I've finished no Metroid games, as in Metroid series proper. None of those games I finished until this Metroid Prime playthrough, and Metroid Prime, really good. You probably know why Metroid Prime is good. If you don't, you should play it and figure it out. Maybe Retro will actually make that trilogy on Switch, who knows? But it's also like one of the most immersive games I've ever played. And I know that immersion is kind of like a big buzzword with Metroid. It doesn't really mean anything anymore, but it do be immersive, though. It do, in fact, be one of the most immersive games I've ever played, and it's just so aesthetically beautiful even today, and it's just fun the whole way through. It's a game I really don't have a lot to say about, but it is an A tier. And you probably know why it's an A tier, but if you don't, play Metroid Prime. Alright, Deadly Premonition is an A-tier game. Now, quality-wise, this would be a D-tier game. Like, Deadly Premonition is like one of the worst games I've ever played, but it also is like one of the best games I ever played. Like, I'd put it in S tier. Like, that's how much like impact and like lasting impression of the game stuck with me, but the game also crashed 3 times on me, and then I should probably put it down with Ori, but overall, like, the bad performance of this game also, like, helps the game in a weird way. Like, it goes for, like, sort of, like, the Twin Peaks, like, aesthetic. So, like, when the game isn't working quite right, like, even if it's not intentional, it feels intentional. Now, of course, there's, like, the obvious, like, definitely not good things, like the game crashing. And if the game never crashed, I might even put it up in S tier. But it did crash a lot. It crashed 3 times on me. It's not a good look, no matter what game you are, even if it is ironic. I lost a lot of progress because of those crashes. But if you actually do stick with this game and see the content that it has to offer, this is like one of the most genuine and heartfelt games. Like, there is just such an incredible story behind it that I'm still thinking about to this day. Like, the ending is just mind-destroying chaos and insanity, but in, like, the best way possible. And if you have not played it, I hesitate to say that you should play it, but it is a wonderful time that I cannot recommend enough if you do. Alright, and now we come to the Mega Man section of the video. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 Mega Man games to talk about right now. We're starting with the Legends series because that's the easiest for me to talk about. Legends 1 is one of my favorite games of all time, and sort of like Symphonia, this recent playthrough I did really solidified that for me. Made me remember why I love the game so much. And if you have not seen my really long video and do not care to see my really long video on why this game is so good, this game was ahead of its time in a lot of ways. Like, this was a pre-Metal Gear Solid, pre-Ocarina of Time 3D adventure that had a, wholly explorable world. It had great animated cutscenes with maybe corny voice acting, but still really good voice acting nonetheless. It has a control scheme that is really awkward, and people will readily say it has not aged well, but when you understand the intent of the game and what it's trying to go for, you can kind of, realize, you then begin to realize just, kind of how good and how, well made it is. It's not the best game of all time, and if people say it hasn't aged well, then clearly that is evidence that it's just not nearly as timeless as one would hope for. There are plenty of other, Nintendo 64 and PlayStation games that are much more natural to play to a modern audience than Legends 1 is. That being said, if you give it the chance, if you give it the time of day, it's one of those games where you can really see the heart that was put into it. And then after Mega Man Legends came the Misadventures of Tron Bonne, which is an A-tier title. It's got all the same heart and soul as Mega Man Legends 1. In the way that a spin-off title really should, it takes that gameplay format and then really runs in a different direction with it. So instead of a more open-world adventure game, we now have a mission-based, sort of Pikmin-esque time where you just have a debt to pay off, and it doesn't matter how you get the money, you just gotta get the money somehow, and you go on a variety of different missions. And you can do whatever missions you do or don't want to. I absolutely hate some of the missions with every fiber of my being, but I also never have to play those missions again if I ever want to replay this game. It gives you a whole lot of options to really do whatever it is you want to do with the game. Whatever gameplay style you like, you could mostly just focus on that, and then maybe one or two others. And that's all you have to do to beat the game. So overall, it's a really fun time. This was my first time beating the game for myself this year. I've owned the game for a while, and just never beat it for myself. I saw many playthroughs of it back in the day, before I had access to the Legends games for myself. So yeah, this was my first time playing it, and it holds up pretty well. It holds up about as well as Legends 1, but I am a ridiculous man who says that Legends 1 is one of his favorite games of all time, and this game is really good too. After Tron Bonne, though, is the proper sequel to Mega Man Legends, Mega Man Legends 2, which, spoilers for my Mega Man Legends 2 retrospective video when that comes out later. When I played Legends 2 again, I kind of realized how I liked the other two games much better. It's kind of weird to say because Legends 2 is easily the game that plays the best. It supports analog stick controls now, which Legends 1 and Tron Bonne did not. Easily, this game has aged the best of these three games, but it doesn't quite have the same heart to it. You kind of realize how much you miss, the one island settings of both of these games and how attached you grew to that island. When you play Legends 2, because, yeah, the world's bigger, there's more islands to go to, there's more dungeons, there's more special weapons, I believe, there's more content, but it all feels more disconnected. The overall story, kind of goes in an interesting direction, but it's also Kingdom Hearts levels of complicated, and we don't get the resolution to that, unfortunately. So it's forever going to be this, weird, it's what if Golden Sun 1 had its ending and Golden Sun 2 never existed? That's kind of where we are with Mega Man Legends 2. Maybe I'd feel differently if we had a Legends 3 and we saw where it went to, but we don't, unfortunately. overall it does play the best. I know that some people say that Legends 2 is their favorite of the Mega Man Legends series, and I do not discredit those opinions. I love all three of these games. These are just great games. But Legends 2 is definitely my least favorite of those three. For more details, I guess see my video on Legends 2 when it eventually gets made, but I'm still gonna replay it. Like, maybe I'd even put it up in A tier, but I don't feel as strongly about it as the other A tier titles, so I think B is just a fine spot for it. Alright, now we have the 11 mainline Mega Man games. I'm kind of trying to decide how I want to do this, because these games are like so similar that you really have to nitpick between like very minor similarities when it comes to which one is better or worse, and it's all completely subjective in the end anyway, so who really cares? But it's like, do I just want to go in chronological order, or do I want to go in my order of favorites? I'll go in chronological order, because I think that'd be a little bit more suspenseful. Mega Man 1 is a D tier game. I feel like I really don't need to say that. But in case I do have to say it, it's a D tier game because it's just old, and it's definitely the first one in I guess the most plain way of speaking in that sense. Like, for what it is, it's a really fun and good game, but and to be fair, I'm more willing to play Mega Man 1 than I am Cold Steel 1 or Yakuza Dead Souls. I do not see that happening for a long time, if I ever do. Thankfully, the Legacy Collections exist, and those Legacy Collections make it much easier to play Mega Man 1, but if they did not exist, then I'd probably play this game once and then never again, which I think makes it D tier. Mega Man 2, maybe B tier? I don't know. I'd feel more confident with it in C tier. Mega Man 2 is definitely a huge step up from Mega Man 2, or Mega Man 1. It introduced E-Tanks, it added 2 more Robot Masters to the boss order. This is just one of the most iconic video games of all time. And it made many like level design improvements and logistical improvements and like so many improvements in so many ways. But that being said, it still suffers from old NES game problems. It's not always the most fair game in the world. Sometimes you do just fall down invisible blocks into some spikes and that's it, that's the end of your life. There's also the Boo Beam Turret boss fight, which is just like one of the worst designed boss fights in any video game I've ever played. But that being said, the rest of the game is like just so classic and so fun that, and also there is nostalgia too, but for those reasons, I enjoy it way more than Mega Man 1, and also enjoy it way more than Mega Man 3, which is my least favorite Mega Man game in the classic series, at least. So there's a few things I already don't like about Mega Man 3, and I don't want to make this like a Mega Man 3 rant video, because I feel like I don't want this whole list to be dominated by Mega Man talk, but 3 has a lot of issues and a lot of unpolished design. Supposedly this game wasn't even finished when it was released. Like, they just shipped it out as it was, or the most complete build they had. Which makes a lot of the decisions they made as designers make a lot more sense when put into that context. But I don't care whether it was finished or not. I'm grading it the same as all these Mega Man titles, and there was always something about 3 that I just didn't like in comparison to the other games, and knowing that it wasn't finished really made me understood why I felt that way. I'd willingly say it's more polished than Mega Man 1, but there's a lot about Mega Man 3 that's also just not really all that fun or well designed or good, like the Doc Robot stages. And I know that's like the lowest blow I could possibly throw against Mega Man 3, but I think I hate the Doc Robot stages more than most people. So I don't know, that's just how I feel. Mega Man 4 is a C tier title. About the same quality as Mega Man 2. I'd say it's technically better than Mega Man 2, but also there's a few annoyances about like the Dr. Cossack and Wily Castle stages that really annoy me. But overall it is still a really fun game. And Mega Man 5 is like one of the most underrated Mega Man games I think I know of. Apparently, a lot of people really don't like Mega Man 5, and mostly that's for the reason of it's the 5th one. There's like 4 other Mega Man games, and this one doesn't feel like all too different, but I disagree. Mega Man 5 has like some of the best level design in Mega Man, has like some of the most creative gimmicks, and unfortunately, like, yeah, Crystal Man stage exists, and that's pretty bad, but every other stage in the game is such a banger. Gravity Man, like Charge Man, Wave Man, like banger after banger after banger right there. And it's kind of weird to talk about the story in a Mega Man game, but 5 also has one of my favorite stories in classic Mega Man. And overall, it's just really fun game. Like Mega Man 6, which is also a really fun game, and my favorite of the NES Mega Man games. What I like about 6 is like the Rush adapters. It's such a simple thing, but it really sets it apart from all the other 5 Mega Man games on the NES. And yeah, it is derivative of 4 and 5 in a lot of ways, but overall, it's still fun, and I still enjoy it. Mega Man 7 is also shockingly good. Like, I am truly blown away by how good Mega Man 7 is. For some reason, I thought that a lot of people didn't like it, and I'm sure there's still a faction of people out there that don't like it. But I used to not like 7 because everyone else told me they didn't like it, so I didn't like it either. But then I played 7 for the first time this year, and 7 really meshes well, like, the good parts of classic Mega Man, and also, like, the good parts of Mega Man X. Like, there's a lot of secrets and little things to find in the game that just make it so fun and explorative and replayable, and it's just really, really well done. And Wily Capsule 7 is like the most ass final boss I've ever faced in any video game. But hey, the rest of the game was really good. And then there's Mega Man 8. It looks pretty. It's a pretty looking game. One of the best PlayStation 1 games, I think. The rest of the game isn't great though. Like, never mind the jump, slide. Like, the rest of the game is just, like, okay at its best. It's just okay. Nothing really to say. It's just okay, man. Like Mega Man 9. Mega Man 9 is just okay. So, Mega Man 9 is interesting because Mega Man 9 feels like someone's memory of what an NES game is like, but if this person also didn't go back to play an NES game in the however many years it's been since they played it. Like, Mega Man 9 is maybe the most difficult classic Mega Man game. I don't know about Mega Man Base, I haven't finished Mega Man in Base yet, but of the 10 classic titles, I'd easily say 9 is the most difficult. And in a weird way, since I played the first 9 Mega Man games back to back, I was prepared for the challenge that Mega Man 9 threw at me. And because of that, I got like this visceral, like, brutal enjoyment out of Mega Man 9 than I otherwise would have. But I also think it's too punishing and too brutal for just regular play. Like, if a poor casual Mega Man fan were to pick up Mega Man 9, I do not think they would enjoy it. Like, Lord knows, I used to not enjoy Mega Man 9 back in the day because it was just that brutal and that hard, and I could never get past any one of the Robot Master stages. Like, it's just that tough of a game, and if you manage to even get to Wily, like, good luck. Well, not Wily the boss himself. Wily the boss is not all that bad, but, like, the Wily stages, like, good grief. Like that time you have to freeze the magma pillars with the concrete gun or whatever it was. Like, woof. Good luck on that one. And then there's Mega Man 10, which feels like the game that Mega Man 9 should have been. And I get why people don't like it, because it is, in a way, derivative like Mega Man 6 is to 4 and 5. Mega Man 10 is derivative as 9. It feels like just another step rather than a full, like, reimagining. But that being said, it's a solid game. Like I'd even put it up an A tier. Like that's how solid of a game it is. I do think it's an A tier game. Maybe even like top 5 Mega Man games? Top classic Mega Man games at least? Top 3 even? I don't know. A whole Mega Man ranking would be something I'd put a lot more thought into in the future, but it's a really good game, all said and done. Like Mega Man 11, which is also the best Mega Man game. Like, I don't like it as much as Legends, obviously, but if you haven't played Mega Man 11, again, this is just one of those, like, really good, really solid games. It's so good that it almost feels like they didn't even stop making Mega Man games at all. Like, every level is just so well designed and so fun, and it's challenging, but not in the way that, like, Mega Man 9 is challenging. It's, like, actually, like, fair and balanced. It's so, like, well-tooled for its difficulty, and, like, it's one of those games where it's, like, it doesn't really go exceedingly beyond, like, the standards one might have for it, but it fulfills those standards so well that I'd always be willing to just play this game again. Like, I've done maybe, like, 5 or so playthroughs since the game came out, which is maybe not a lot, but, I don't know, any game I'd play 5 times over and over is a lot for me. And then we get to the final game of the night, Hades. Hades good. I don't think I need to say anything more than that. I'm not even someone that really likes roguelike games all that much, and I know people say roguelite or whatever. Regardless, it's not a genre of games that I really enjoy. That being said, Hades just has combat that's so fun and so dynamic and so, like, engaging at every, like, step of its journey that, like, I have no trouble picking this game back up again and playing it again. And also, it has, like, progression elements that carry over into future runs, which is also one of my biggest problems of roguelikes, is that you just lose everything because of permanent death, but not in Hades. It has such a nice balance where it rewards you for if you're actually skilled and can get it through the game pretty fast. But even for someone like me, who is bad at roguelikes and bad at Hades, and despite not having finished a run, I still feel like I'm improving. I get better with every run, and it's not just the actual upgrades the game's giving me. I do feel like I actually grow with my knowledge and get more adept at fighting, and I can make it through rooms without taking damage, and it feels pretty frickin' good. Like, a lot of people have already talked about Hades. A lot of people say this is their game of the year. Speaking of games that have released in 2020, yeah, I'd probably say Hades is that game, or my favorite game of 2020 releases that I have at least dedicated enough time to. Yeah, Hades good. That's all I have to say about that. And here is my tier list for the games I played in 2020. Overall, really, really enjoyable year for me. Sadly, I did not get to play as many new releases as I would have liked to this year. And those who were following the channel saw my Gaming on a Budget series. They understand exactly why, I'm sure. But of the games I played, these are my rankings of them. And if you enjoyed this sort of format of me making a tier list of all the games I played, let me know, and I'll consider doing it again in the future if this gets received well, and if I didn't do it well, please give me some constructive feedback. This is a new kind of video for me, new kind of experience, so I've seen a lot of tier list videos. I don't know if I've done it justice this time, but please let me know if I did or didn't. And that's all I have to say, so thank you so much for sticking and watching this whole tier list I made, and if I do it again, I'll see you next time.